Hello viewers, I am Dr. Tehsina Shireen and I welcome you all to this open educational resources on a YouTube channel, an initiative of the Zoological Society of Assam. At the very onset, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the ZSA for giving us this tremendous platform to present ourselves on a global scale. This is indeed very beneficial to the students and the teachers as well, particularly for the younger generations. So here I have made a decent effort to teach muscle physiology. Since it has many subtopics, I have divided my lecture into two presentations, Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 will include muscle, its structure, types and their properties. This will cater to both the undergraduate and the postgraduate students of the CBCS curriculum. Hope you will all enjoy listening to this first part of my lecture. So here it goes. What shall we learn from this lecture? Firstly, the historical background, that is, the works of the famous physiologists that have contributed immensely to the present knowledge on muscle physiology. Secondly, a brief introduction followed by the histological structure of a muscle cell. Then, we shall also learn about different types of muscle tissue and their properties. Lastly, we shall also learn about ultrastructure of skeletal muscle. Here, we shall understand what myofilaments are and that they are made up of contractile proteins and their arrangement in a muscle cell. So, let us first begin with the history. A viscous protein was extracted from muscle with concentrated salt solution by Sir Wilhelm Friedrich Koene in the year 1864, which he called myosine and considered it responsible for the rigor state of muscle. Actin was discovered by Sir Albert Szent-Györgyi in the year 1942. A remarkable contribution to muscle physiology was made by Nobel laureate Sir Andrew F. Huxley. He won the Nobel Prize in Physiology Medicine in the year 1963 for discovering a milestone towards understanding electrical stimulation of nerve cells. His structural studies led to the sliding filament concept in the year 1958. The sliding filament theory was based on the observations of constancy of the length of A band and shortening of the I band during a contraction. As pointed out by Sir Huxley, this observation was made by applying interference microscope to the most differentiated motile system available, namely intact frog muscle fibers. Other remarkable discoveries were tropomyosin was discovered and isolated by Bailey in the year 1946 and 1948. Cross-bridge cycle was proposed by Lim and Taylor in the year 1971. Now, let us first go through a brief introduction. Since antiquity, motion has been looked upon as the index of life. Now, what is the organ of motion? Yes, it is muscle. Muscle is a soft tissue primarily responsible for most of our interactions with the external world, namely maintaining and changing posture, locomotion, as well as movement of internal organs such as contraction of the heart. The muscular system creates body heat and also moves the bones of the skeletal system, food through the digestive system, blood through the circulatory system, and fluids through the excretory system. The human body is made up of approximately 850 muscles, of which 650 can be controlled by us at our will, that is, voluntary inaction, and the rest are involuntary muscles. Muscle accounts for nearly half of the body's mass. Muscle is a contractile tissue and it comes from a mesodermal layer of embryonic germ cells in a process called myogenesis. Muscles make up the bulk of the body and account for 1/3 of its weight. About 40% of the body is skeletal muscle and perhaps another 10% is smooth and cardiac muscle. Blood vessels and nerves run to every muscle, helping control and regulate each muscle's function. Now, let us learn about the physiologic anatomy or the histological features of a muscle cell. Muscle cells are called muscle fibers. The size ranges from 10 to 80 micrometers in diameter. Each muscle fiber is made up of number 1, sarcolemma. This is the muscle fiber plasma membrane forming the outer layer. The sarcolemma consists of a true cell membrane called the plasma membrane and an outer coat made up of a thin layer of polysaccharide material that contains numerous thin collagen fibrils. At the end of the muscle fiber, the surface layer of the sarcolemma fuses with a tendon fiber, and the tendon fibers in turn collect into bundles to form the muscle tendons that then insert into the bones. Next comes the sarcoplasm. This is a muscle fiber cytoplasm containing glycosomes and the oxygen binding protein called myoglobin, nucleus, and sarcoplasmic reticulum. It also contains large quantities of potassium, magnesium, and phosphate, plus multiple protein enzymes. Also present are tremendous numbers of mitochondria that lie parallel to the myofibrils. Now, what are myofibrils? They are rod-like structure which are present in the sarcoplasm. Each myofibril is made up of thick and thin myofilaments. The contracting myofibrils obtain the large amounts of energy required in the form of adenosine triphosphate formed by the mitochondria. Next is the sarcoplasmic reticulum. This is the smooth endoplasmic reticulum in the muscle fiber, a network of tubes surrounding myofibrils. The very rapidly contracting types of muscle fibers have specially extensive sarcoplasmic reticulum. Each segment of the sarcoplasmic reticulum forms a cuff-like structure surrounding a myofibril that extend the length of striated muscle cells. It releases and reabsorbs calcium ions to cause contraction and relaxation. By regulating the concentration of calcium in the sarcoplasm, the sarcoplasmic reticulum plays an important role in determining whether muscle contraction occurs. Now, let's learn about transverse tubules. These are tubules formed by the invaginations of the sarcolemma and flanked by the sarcoplasmic reticulum. They are called T-tubules because they run across the fiber. Now, what is a triad? A triad is the structure formed by a T-tubule with a sarcoplasmic reticulum known as the terminal cisterna on either side. They carry action potentials deep into the muscle fiber and signals for the release of calcium ion from adjacent terminal cisterna. The function of T-tubules is to conduct impulses from the sarcolemma down into the cell. A receptor protein, dihydropyridine, act as voltage sensors. That is, it senses the membrane depolarization, alters its conformation, and activates the ryanodine receptor that releases the calcium ion from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now, let's look into the image showing the histological features that we have just learned. This is the image showing the histological features of a typical muscle cell. We can see the sarcolemma. The sarcolemma forms a physical barrier against the external environment and also mediates signals between the exterior and the muscle cell. It maintains a membrane potential, so impulses travel along the muscle cell membranes just as they do along nerve cell membranes. However, the function of impulses in muscle cells is to bring about contraction. Muscle cell has an abundant supply of mitochondria in the sarcoplasm, which are vital for supplying chemical energy in the form of ATP to the contractile system. As you can see from the diagram, the mitochondria lie close to the contractile elements in the cells. As shown in the figure, the sarcoplasmic reticulum forms a network around the myofibrils, storing and providing the calcium ion that is required for muscle contraction. Each muscle fiber or a muscle cell contains several hundred to several thousand myofibrils. Each myofibril again is composed of 1500 adjacent thick filaments and 3000 thin filaments, which are large polymerized protein molecules that are responsible for the actual muscle contraction. Now, let us look into the transverse tubules. The transverse tubular system is a network of interconnecting rings, each of which surrounds a myofibril. It provides an important communication pathway between the outside of the fiber and the myofibrils. In the histology of muscle, a triad is a structure formed by a T-tubule with a sarcoplasmic reticulum known as terminal cisterna on either side, as you can see from the figure shown. Now, let us move into the next section, that is the types of muscle tissue. There are three classes of muscle tissues which are grouped according to number 1, their location in relation to other body structure, number 2, the histological or tissue structure, and number 3, the way their action is controlled. So, on the basis of these three criteria, we have smooth muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue, and skeletal muscle tissue. Now, let us first look into the smooth muscle tissue. They are spindle-shaped, non-striated, and uninucleated fibers. They are called involuntary muscles because it works automatically rather than under conscious control. They are also called smooth muscle from its magnified appearance. It occurs in the walls of body parts such as airways, stomach, alimentary canal, and blood vessels. It plays one of the most important roles in controlling the movement of fluids through the visceral organs and the circulatory system, regulating the internal state of the human body. While one of the terms describing smooth muscle is visceral, which means its location in internal organs, much smooth muscle is, however, also located elsewhere. For example, the muscles that control the diameter of the pupil of the eye and accommodate the eye for near vision, those that cause body hair to become erect, which are called the pilomotor muscles, and also those that control the diameter of blood vessels, are all examples of smooth muscles that are not visceral. The contraction of smooth muscles is involuntary. Although contraction may occur in response to a nerve stimulus, many smooth muscles are also controlled by circulating hormones or contracted under the influence of local hormonal or metabolic influences quite independent of the nervous system. One of the most important general features of the physiology of smooth muscle is the economical use of energy. For example, the muscle of the uterus contracts and relaxes rapidly and powerfully during childbirth, but is normally not very active during most of the rest of a woman's life. Now, cardiac muscle tissue. They have striated, tubular, branched and uninucleated fibers. As the name suggests, it is found only in the heart. It is part of both the muscular system and the circulatory system. It provides the force that moves blood throughout the body. Though it is striated in appearance, its contractions are involuntary. Cardiac muscle, found only in the myocardium, that is, the middle layer of the heart wall, contracts in response to signals from the cardiac conduction system to make the heart beat. The heartbeat arises from within the cardiac muscle and is not initiated by the nervous system. It has its own pacemaker for rhythmic beating. The nervous system, however, does participate in regulating the rate and strength of heart muscle contractions. Now, skeletal muscle. They have striated, tubular and multinucleated fibers. Skeletal muscles are also known as voluntary muscles since we control their actions at our own will. They are also called as striated muscles from their microscopic appearance. Skeletal muscles attach to and move bones by contracting and relaxing in response to voluntary messages from the nervous system. As its name implies, skeletal muscles are connected to the skeleton, either to bone or to connective tissue such as ligaments. It is responsible for large and forceful movements such as those involved in walking, running and lifting heavy objects, as well as for small and delicate movements that position the eyeballs or allow the manipulation of tiny objects. All skeletal muscle is externally controlled. It cannot contract without a signal from the somatic nervous system. Out of these three muscle tissues, skeletal muscle is a highly organized one. It is often used as a typical muscle for purposes of discussion, and therefore we shall also take the skeletal muscle as the topic of discussion today in this lecture. Now, let us look into the ultrastructure of a skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscles are usually attached to bones by tendons. Now, what are tendons? Tendons are tough, fibrous cords of connective tissue that link skeletal muscle to bones. This connective tissue also ensheathes the entire muscle and is called the epimysium. Muscle fibers are organized into bundles called fascicles supplied by blood vessels and innervated by motor neurons. Fascicles are also surrounded by connective tissue called the perimysium, and each fascicle is composed of numerous muscle fibers. As we can see from the diagram, at the end of the muscle fiber, The surface layer of sarcolemma fuses with a tendon fiber, and the tendon fibers in turn collect into bundles to form the muscle tendons that then insert into the bones. Muscle cells are encapsulated by endomysium, consists of many fibrils or myofibrils. Now, let us see myofilaments and their arrangement in a sarcomere. This is a diagram showing the myofilaments and how they are arranged in a sarcomere. Each muscle fiber is made up of longitudinal myofibrils. Each myofibril is a bundle of thread-like elements consisting of myofilaments. Myofilaments are extremely fine thread-like protein. There are two types of myofilaments. The entire myofilament is composed of alternating light and dark bands. The light bands contain only actin filaments and are called the I bands because they are isotropic to polarized light. The dark bands contain myosin filaments as well as the ends of the actin filaments where they overlap the myosin and are called A bands because they are anisotropic to polarized light. The ends of the actin filaments are attached to a so-called Z disc, as you can see from the diagram given. From this disc, these filaments extend in both directions to interdigitate with the myosin filaments. The Z disc passes crosswise across the myofibril and also crosswise from myofibril to myofibril, attaching the myofibrils to one another all the way across the muscle fiber. Therefore, the entire muscle fiber has light and dark bands, as do the individual myofibrils. These bands give skeletal and cardiac muscle their striated appearance. Now, what is a sarcomere? The portion of the myofibril that lies between two successive Z discs is called a sarcomere. Apart from the proteins actin and myosin, there are other proteins also. For example, titin. The side-by-side relationship between myosin and actin filaments is maintained by a large number of filamentous molecules of a protein called titin. Nebulin, a filamentous protein that extends along the thin filaments, may play a role in stabilizing thin filament length during muscle development. The protein alpha-actinin associated with the Z lines serves to anchor the thin filaments to the structure of the Z line. Dystrophin, which lies just inside the sarcolemma, participates in the transfer of force from the contractile system to the outside of the cells via membrane-spanning proteins called integrins. Now, let us now have a look to the structure and arrangement of myosin molecules within thick filament. The myosin filament is composed of multiple myosin molecules, each having a molecular weight of about 4,80,000. Figure A shows an individual myosin molecule and figure B shows the organization of many myosin molecules to form a myosin filament. The individual myosin molecule in figure A is composed of 6 polypeptide chains, 2 heavy chains each with a molecular weight of about 2 lakh and 4 light chains with molecular weights of about 20,000 each. The two heavy chains wrap spirally around each other to form a double helix, which is called the tail of the myosin molecule. One end of each of these chains is folded bilaterally into a globular polypeptide structure called a myosin head. Thus, there are two free heads at one end of the double helix myosin molecule. As we can see from the figure, it contains an actin binding site by which it can interact with the thin filament and an ATP binding site that is involved in a supply of energy for the actual process of contraction. The four light chains are also part of the myosin head, two to each head. These light chains help control the function of the head during muscle contraction. The central portion of one of these filaments, as shown in figure B, displaying the tails of the myosin molecules bundled together to form the body of the filament, while many heads of the molecules hang outward to the sides of the body. A myosin head projects every 60 degrees around the circumference of the filament, with each one displaced 14.4 nanometer further along the filament. The effect is like that of a bundle of golf clubs bound tightly by the handles, with the heads projecting from the bundle. Now, after learning about the myosin filament and the structure and arrangement in the myosin, we will now look into the structure and arrangement of actin monomers within the thin filament. Each actin filament is about 1 micrometer long. It is composed of three protein components: actin, tropomyosin and troponin. The backbone of the actin filament is a double-stranded F-actin protein molecule consisting of two strands of macromolecular subunits entwined about each other, as you can see from the figure. The strands are composed of repeating subunits or monomers of the globular protein G-actin with molecular weight 41,700. These slightly ellipsoid molecules are joined front to back into long chains that wind about each other, forming a helical structure called the F-actin or filamentous actin that undergoes a half turn every 7 G-actin monomers. Attached to one of the G-actin molecules is one molecule of ADP. It is believed that these ADP molecules are the active sites on the actin filaments. As you can see from the figure, in the groove formed down the length of the helix, there is an end-to-end series of fibrous protein molecules with molecular weight 70,000 called the tropomyosin. Near one end of each tropomyosin molecule is another protein complex called troponin, which is composed of three attached subunits: troponin I, that is TNI, troponin C, TNC, and troponin T, TNT, as shown in the figure. The troponin I subunit has an inhibitory function. Troponin C subunit is capable of binding calcium ions, and the troponin T subunit attaches the complex to tropomyosin. This troponin-tropomyosin complex regulates the contraction of skeletal muscle. Now, having learned the structure and arrangement of actin and myosin filaments, let us now have a brief look to the interaction that takes place between an actin and myosin filament. In the resting state, the tropomyosin molecules lie on the top of the active sites of the actin strands, so that attraction cannot occur between the actin and myosin filaments to cause contraction. before contraction can take place. That is, once the muscle is activated, the inhibitory effect of the troponin-tropomyosin complex must itself be inhibited. This brings in the role of the calcium ions. In the presence of large amounts of calcium ions, the inhibitory effect of the troponin-tropomyosin on the actin filaments is itself inhibited. When calcium ions combine with troponin C, the troponin complex supposedly undergoes a conformational change that in some way tugs on the tropomyosin molecule and moves it deeper into the groove between the two acting strands. This uncovers the active sites of the actin, which then allow these to attract the myosin heads and cause the contraction to proceed. We shall learn more of this mechanism of contraction, including chemical and molecular basis, in the second part of this lecture. So, finally, we have come to the end of the first part. Now, with the hope that you all have understood about the basic features of a muscle cell, let us quickly learn some interesting facts. Now, which is the largest tendon in your body? Well, this is an interesting one. The answer is Achilles tendon. Now, if you want to feel that this tendon, you can just touch the back of your ankle to know what is the Achilles tendon. Yes, the back of your ankle is made up of Achilles tendon, that is the largest tendon in our body. Now, what is the strongest muscle in the body? Well, this is debatable, but many say the masseter, that is the jaw muscle. What is the largest muscle in the body? The gluteus maximus in your rear end. Now, this one is quite an interesting one. Can you give me example of a skeletal muscle that does not move bones together? Yes, this is the human tongue. The human tongue is made up of a skeletal muscle that does not move bones together. Well, now these are the books that I have referred to while preparing this first part of my lecture, and I all hope and expect you to stay tuned for the next session of this lecture. And any queries or feedback or any doubts or any question, please write to me at the given email ID. And thank you so much for your patience and your valuable time. Thank you.